spring cleaning is and how it works and what we can all do. What are we going to learn about this week? So we have a lesson for you every morning this week, and they're all about something a little bit different. Today, we're going to learn a little bit of history about spring cleaning and why we need to spring clean Scotland every single year. Tomorrow, we're going to learn about the items that we litter the most, what happens with litter, and why it's such a problem for wildlife. On Wednesday, we'll learn some cool facts and stories about the games that you like to play in the playground and why litter in parks can affect our right to play and how we enjoy our outside spaces. And on Thursday, we're going to learn how we can help solve this problem of litter by properly practicing the 3 R's. And on Friday, we hope you can join us for an assembly to celebrate everything we've learned. So let's get started. Today, we're going to learn, what does spring cleaning mean? How long and in which ways have we been spring cleaning for? And why do we need to spring clean every year? So what does spring cleaning mean? Maybe you already have some ideas. Maybe this is something you do at home yourselves. Because as we emerge from long winter months of short days and cold weather and being inside a lot, our natural instinct is to open all the windows and the doors as soon as the days are becoming longer and to shake off not just our bodies from the sensations of winter, but also our homes from all those months of being inside, to freshen up our homes and prepare them for the new time to come. And we've been doing this as humans for hundreds or even thousands of years. Cleaning is linked to some traditions. Some of you may already practice these. For example, in Thailand, the New Year's festival, the New Year festival in Persian Nowruz, and also the Jewish Passover holiday. All of these cultures and traditions have long traditions of cleaning for celebrating new times and symbolizing new beginnings. So right now, we're going to play a little game called Guess the Cleaning Gadget. Now, for this game, usually when we play games in our lessons, we put our answers in the chat, right? But this time, we're not going to do that because that would tell everyone our answer. This time, what we're going to do is either, if you have a whiteboard or a piece of paper in front of you, you can write down your answer, and then you can count how many that you get right at the end. Or if you don't have any paper or whiteboard with you just now, that's okay. You can also tell the person next to you what you think this thing is. Okay, so let's get started. Remember, don't put your answer in the chat. Okay, let's see how many you can get right. What is this? This thing on a handle like this looks very interesting. What do you think it might be? I'll give you a little bit of time to look at it. It might be made of wood or bamboo. It has an interesting waffle pattern on it. Maybe you need a hint. Here's someone who might be using one. What do you think they're doing there at the door? He's giving her something. Right, time is up. I'll tell you, this is a carpet beater. It's used to get all the dust and dirt out of a carpet or a rug. You'd hang the rug up and then you'd smack it with this thing and it would make all the dust come out. Right, here's our second one. What is this? This box thing. Do we think this is? Start the timer. Maybe you need another hint. What is this thing? This very large thing on a cart pulled by a horse. What could they be doing there with all the pipes going in the windows? Looks complicated. Time's up. Shall I tell you? It's a vacuum cleaner or Hoover. How interesting that they're so big back then, and now a Hoover is a very small thing we can keep in a cupboard. Okay, here's a third one. what were these used for? Which of these was used in the past to clean pots and the kitchen in general? Which one do you think you would use to clean pots? Do you think it's the bread, the milk, or the lemons? Well, I'll tell you, it's lemons because they're good for degreasing, because they're acidic. And the acid in the lemons, that's why they're so tart, and it helps get rid of the grease. Now, which of these other two things were used for dusting? Which one do you think was used to get rid of dust? Is it the milk, maybe? Or was it the bread? Which one? Kind of an interesting thing because I don't think many people do it this way anymore. I'll tell you. It was bread. The soft part of bread was used to trap dust. Interesting as that. Nowadays, we would use a cloth and like a spray. Okay, so there's only one left. What do you think milk was used for around the house? Milk. Other than putting it in your coffee or eating it with your breakfast cereal, what do you think you might do with milk? This was a tough one. I didn't get this one right when we looked at the slides before. This one, milk, was used to wash stone floors. That's something I had never thought of. But I learned something this morning. Right, next one. What is this? It's got a round thing at the bottom, a big container, and then some kind of thing at the top with a crank, maybe? Don't know at all what that could be, do you? Time's almost up. And Miss Hamill is right. It is a very old washing machine. And it's actually a Miele brand, which is a brand we still have now, except they look a lot different now. And the thing at the top is called a mangle. Does anyone know what a mangle was used for? I wonder if you can guess. If the bottom tub thing is for washing clothes, what do you think the mangle was used for? I think you can have a guess and tell the person next to you, see if you get it right. Mangle was used to press all the water out of the clothes. So you would put the clothes through and you would turn the crank and it would squish the clothes down, squeeze all the water out harder than you could do it with your hands so that they would dry faster when you hung them up outside. Right, I think this might be our last one. Here we go, yes. Of course, looking at the washing machine, not everyone used to have the luxury of having a washing machine in their house or even in their building, or even have a tap inside their homes to get water from. You might not believe this, but it wasn't until just a few decades ago that there were places called wash houses or steamies. And these were places where the weekly wash could take place of clothes and of bodies. And they were great because they were also places where you could catch up on all the local gossip and news. And you might notice next time you're out and about that there are buildings that used to be steamies and wash houses still in your communities. So the one on the left is in Glasgow, and it's the old Govan Hill Baths, and the one on the right is in Union Street, and I cannot remember what town that's in, I apologize, but you can see that that used to also be bathhouse. Now, do you know what a gazunder is? That's a funny word, isn't it? Do we know what that might be? If you can have a guess on your whiteboard or your piece of paper, or tell the person next to you, do you think you might know what that is used for? What does the word sound like? Gazunder, what does that sound like? Right, I'll tell you. It is a chamber pot, and it's called that because it goes under your bed. A while ago, people didn't have toilets inside their homes and maybe didn't want to go outside to the outside loo. So potty that went under your bed was needed for those midnight calls of nature. So, how many did you get right? Did you get them all right? You can put in the chat how many answers you got correct. I'd love to know. I'd also love to know if you got the one that I didn't get, the milk. If you got that one right, I'll be very impressed. So while you, oh, 2 or 3, good job. Right, all of them. Mrs. Hart got all of them right. Well done. Now, Mrs. Hart, was that your whole class or was that yourself? Right. You keep putting those in the chat and I'll move on to our next bit. Okay, because I know it might take you a while to count up how many, especially if you got a lot of them right. Okay. Oh, Shawhead said they got 5.5. I'd love to know what the half was. Shawhead, please tell me. So you might be wondering, if we have been cleaning for such a long time, putting so much effort into our cleaning, why do we need to spring clean Scotland every single year? Why are we dirtier and messier than ever before? Why do you think we have so much litter on our streets and parks and waste coming out of our homes? What's going on? You might have your own ideas, and I'd love for you to share them with me while we go through the lesson. But the answer that we're going to focus on today is because we produce and consume too much stuff, just too much. Imagine, for example, one day you have a drink in a single-use plastic bottle. It was nice, so the next day you decide to have another one. It might not seem like much, but it can really add up. In a week, in a month, in 6 months, in 2 years. Now imagine everyone doing the same thing, except it's not just water bottles, is it? It's coffee cups, and takeaway packages, fruit punnets, bottle caps, plastic bags, materials from all the packages that we order online, and much more than that too. All of this waste has to go somewhere, and sometimes it ends up in the wrong place. How much waste do you think each of us in Scotland produce every single year? Right, we have a red deer here, which weighs about 200 kilograms, and a moose, which weighs around 450 kilos, and a bison, which is even heavier at 650. So if you think it's 200 kilos, put 2 hands up. If you think it's 450 kilos, as heavy as a moose, put 1 hand up. And if you think it's as much as a bison weighs, put your hand on your head. Right? And let's see how many you get right. Oh, although I have one thing though here. Although a moose doesn't look like a big animal, it weighs the same as 6 to 8 times the weight of your teacher, or 10 or 12 of you. So let's see how many we get right. It is the moose. 10 or 12 of you. How much waste is that? That's a lot. Can you imagine having a moose standing in your house? That's as much waste as you produce, as everyone produces every year. That's a bit too much. A moose is huge. Yes, moose are very big. They may not look like it because we don't really have moose here, so it's kind of hard to tell how big they are. But I grew up somewhere where there are moose, and they are very, very big indeed. Right, let's try this one. How many pieces of litter are dropped in the UK every single day? It's the whole of the UK, mind you. It's not just Scotland, but let's see. Those are still really big numbers. If you think it's more than 2 million pieces, put 2 hands up, right? If you think it's 1 million pieces, put 1 hand up. And if you think it's 500,000 pieces, put your hand on your head. None of those numbers are good, are they? They're all very big. That's very worrying, no matter which answer is right. It's not good, is it? So which one do we think it is? Let's see which is right. I'm a bit scared, actually. Oh, no. It's more than 2 million pieces every single day. And if we do some quick maths, that means every second, every time you can click your fingers like this, right? At least 23 pieces of litter are being dropped in the UK somewhere. It's not good, is it? That's a very big number. We need to do something about that, don't we? Right. This is why we find ourselves needing to spring clean Scotland every year. We kind of hope we wouldn't have to do this at some point. We can't not do it though, because as we will see tomorrow and on Wednesday, if we don't do something about all of this litter flying around, our wildlife and ourselves will also suffer big consequences. It's a big problem. Right. So what would we like you to do today? Today, we have 2 things we'd like you to do. First, we'd like you to think about a place that you would like to look after. You might like to adopt. And this could be a place that you like to play. It could be a park, could be a path that you like to take walks on. It might even be your school grounds, or maybe it's a local garden, just somewhere close by that you like to be in, you'd like to spend time in. And in the resource folder, there is a page there that you can print. And as a class or as a group, however you're watching today, you can think about a place that you'd like to take care of. And you can make a drawing of that place, or you can draw a map from your school to where it is. You can think about why you've adopted that place. And if you look at the questions there, think about what it looks like before you adopted it. Is it a bit of a mess? Did it need a bit taken care of? Do you think maybe you might want to plant some flowers or do some litter picks, right? And think about how you'd like it to look instead, and what you can do to make sure that happens. Don't forget to take some photos before and after, because as you know, if you do eco-schools, it's really important to keep a record of the work that you do so that you can see all the difference that you've made after you've done all your work. Sometimes it can be really discouraging when something takes a long time, or maybe you want to show someone else, and taking photos will really help you show all the difference that you've made and to encourage yourselves too. Okay, so that is in the resource folder that your teachers have. Okay, and you can tell us about the place that you've decided to look after too. If you'd like to send us your activity sheets and tell us all about your place, we'd love to hear all the things that you do to make your place look cared for as well. And the next thing you can do, this is really fun, I really like this one. The next thing you can do today, if you want to, is to join our new litter league. Now, we know that lots of you love to get out and do a litter pick, but we thought maybe a little competition might be fun too. So what the Litter League is you're going to compete against others on a national and regional level to claim clean-up glory by seeing who can collect the most bags of litter. And you can join as a whole school, as a class, as a community group. Maybe you do scouts or guides after school. You can join with that too. So you can go out and do as many litter picks as you want. And what you do is you click on the link in the PDF in the resource folder, and you just put in how many bags you found and where you found them. And not only will that maybe help you win a trophy for your school or your region, but it also helps us to know how much litter is out there and how much work is being done by volunteers and schools like yourselves to help keep Scotland beautiful. So this is a bit of citizen science as well, and it really helps us out. Right. Now, did you enjoy today's lesson? I hope so. If you did, thumbs up. If it was maybe thumbs to the side. And if no, maybe because you realized today how much litter is actually out there, thumbs down. Of our Spring Clean Live lessons, we're here all week, as you know, with a short lesson every morning on spring cleaning and the problems that litter is creating in our environment and what we can do to fix them. So let's start our slideshow with a wee picture that someone has sent in. Cumley Park Primary School have sent us this lovely tweet showing them watching the live lesson yesterday, which was just brilliant. It just made our day. So thank you so much, Cumley Park. And I think you're here today as well. So hiya! If you want to send us a picture or send us an email and let us know what you thought of the lesson, or send us a picture of you watching us today or carrying out the activities that we're going to be showing you today, then we just always love to see that. We love to say hi to you. We love to see your faces, because obviously we can't do that on the live lesson. So it's always great to hear from you. So this is my colleague Nicola, and she wasn't here yesterday. So Nicola, I think we should tell you what we learned yesterday. What do you think?
That would be brilliant, Kat. I'd love to hear all the things you were talking about yesterday.
Yeah, because we learned a whole lot. And if you weren't here yesterday, that's okay. You can watch the lesson on recording, but I'll just tell you a couple of the things we learned, because it's good to have them in mind when Nicola does our lesson today. So first of all, we started Monday morning by learning what spring cleaning is. And we talked a little bit about how different cultures have different times of year when they have a big clean of the house, and what that means, and the significance of that, and how important it is to everyone, both culturally and also health-wise, to be clean and tidy and to keep our houses nice and tidy. And then we looked at some objects that were used for cleaning in the past, and we had to guess what those might be. And I can see in the chat someone saying you learned that milk was used to clean floors, which, yes, and that was the one that I had no idea about. No. Nicola, we also learned something. Do you know what bread used to be used for? This one's pretty cool too. Yeah, bread.
Eating?
Well, toast, yes, eating, obviously.
That's what I tend to do with bread.
But no, it was used for cleaning something. Do you know what? Can you guess what?
Pots.
Nope, that was something else. We learned that bread used to be used for dusting.
Dusting?
Yeah.
Wow.
How weird is that? The soft part of bread used to be used to pick up dust because it sticks to the soft bread. So I learned quite a few things yesterday myself, and I hope everyone else did too. We also learned that every person, I'm just checking my numbers here, every person in Scotland produces 450 kilos of waste every single year. And we talked about what kind of, Mrs. McGregor's class has got it. We talked about how that is the same weight as a moose. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a moose, but they're very, very big. I grew up in Canada, and we used to actually have moose walking down the street outside my house, no lie. And moose are very big. They're bigger than horses. They've got big noses. They're a very large animal. So imagine one of those in your house, and that is the amount of waste that everyone produces. And sometimes that waste ends up in the wrong place. So this is why we need to spring clean Scotland every year to keep it looking its best and most beautiful. Now, Nicola, I think you have a few things you want to tell us about today, don't you?
I do. Yeah, there's a few extra things I want to share with you. That would be lovely.
Brilliant. So I am going to say see you later for now, and I'm going to let Nicola take over and teach us today's lesson. See you later.
Bye, Kat. So hello, everybody. As Kat said, my name is Nicola, and today we're going to move on with our spring cleaning tour. So that sounds incredible, the things that you guys were learning yesterday. So I'm so excited to take you to the next stage. So what are we going to learn about today? So we're going to look at the different types of litter that we find in Scotland. We're going to think about why litter is a problem for wildlife, and then what we can do to help, because we can do so much to help and so much to protect our amazing wildlife that we have in Scotland and also around the world. So we'll be thinking about how we help animals all around the world as well as we go on our journey. So first question, a lot of you seem to have a really good memory from yesterday. So can you remember how many pieces of litter are dropped in the UK every day? So we said that we've got all this waste that's the size of a moose, but how many pieces of litter are dropped in the UK every day? Can anybody remember from what you talked about yesterday with Kat? Yes, that says too many. Oh, we're getting some answers coming in. You can share them in the chat or just talk about them in class. Oh, brilliant. Lots of people remembering. Oh, you guys have got brilliant memories. You've obviously been paying attention really well. That's fantastic. So it is more than 2 million. So that's a lot of pieces of litter. So that's 23 pieces, I think we worked out every second. So every time you can snap your fingers, there's 23 pieces of litter being dropped. That's a huge amount of litter. And so we've talked about what we can do about that. But what we're going to think about today is a little bit more about those different types of those bits of litter that are being dropped. So I want you to have a little think and have a wee chat in class about what types of litter are being dropped in Scotland. So we know there's over 2 million pieces being dropped. But what is it that's being dropped? What are the most common things that you think we find? So when we go on our litter picks, we do lots of surveys at Keep Scotland Beautiful to find out what types of litter are being dropped and where. What do you think the most common things that we find are? Have a chat in your classes, and then maybe you could share some of your ideas in the chat. That would be amazing. Oh, we've got some coming in already. That's fantastic. So cigarette butts. Oh, that's a really good thought. Bottle caps. Oh, brilliant, we've got more coming in. Crisp packets, cans, water, lots of bottles, coffee cups, crisp packets. Fantastic, lots of amazing ideas here. Yeah, lots of people saying plastic bottles. Yeah, sweet packets, that's another one. Oh, someone said vape, that's a really interesting one. Glass as well, poo bags. That's dog poo bags. Fantastic. Chewing gum, oh, that's another really good one as well. Really interesting ideas. Bags, paper wrappers, brilliant. Plastic bags, cardboard boxes. Unfortunately, these are probably things that you've seen littered around. Oh, so many brilliant ideas. Shopping bags as well. So you've all got a really good idea. You've all obviously, I'm afraid, seen lots of these different types of pieces of litter lying around. Oh, and that's a really interesting one from Bewley Primary there. Masks as well. So particularly following the COVID pandemic that we had, we started to see a lot more of that as well. Takeaway boxes, dog poo bags, lots of plastic bottles. So yeah, lots of these things. You guys obviously know what you're talking about. So here's just a few pictures of all the things that you've named, and these are the things that we most commonly find. So on that top left, you can see that's those cigarette butts. So someone said cigarette butts. That's unfortunately the most common that we can find, along with vapes, which is the one in the middle top there. And as you guys see, you've obviously seen all these. We're commonly seeing plastic bottles, drinks cans, food packaging, plastic bags, and all of the other things that we're seeing. And it's really interesting that someone mentioned disposable vapes as well, because that's actually becoming a much more common one to see. Something before vaping was a thing, we didn't really see those, but now disposable vapes are becoming more common. We're seeing a lot more things like vapes. So thanks for answering. Oh, and thank you, Miss Reid, as well. So yeah, it also depends on really where you are. So you get lots of fishing boxes and fishing ropes because you live near the beach. So it will depend where you are as well. Some people will see slightly different things depending on what's around to be dropped. And I didn't include a picture of dog poo bags, but yeah, that's unfortunately another really common form of litter, I'm afraid. So yeah, there's lots of these different bits of litter being dropped. Thank you for sharing all your ideas. So let's think, what we're going to do now is we're going to go on a little journey. So we want to think about what happens to litter after it's dropped, and we're going to follow a piece of litter on a journey. So let's start here, by a bin. So we know that litter is waste in the wrong place. So we know that all that waste that we're producing should be going in the bin or in the recycling, ideally in the recycling. If it can't go to recycling, it should go in the bin. But sometimes things don't go in the bin, they get littered, they get dropped. And can you see there's a white plastic bag just to the left of the bin there. We're going to go and follow that plastic bag on a bit of a journey that lots of plastic bags unfortunately take. So there's that plastic bag sitting next to the bin. It's been dropped there. It's not been put in the bin properly. And it gets blown by the wind, or it might get washed away in a big rainstorm, like some of the big heavy rain that we had last week. And then if it gets picked up by the wind, it will fly through the air. And if it gets washed by the water, it'll end up going down a drain. And then it ends up in canals or streams or rivers. Quite often, lots of litter ends up in waterways. So you can see some litter here that's being washed in by the rain or blown by the wind. And then once it gets into the water, it gets quite heavy, so it gets held down in the water. And then it's washed downstream. As it washed downstream, it ends up, it can end up on beaches. So if it gets washed and pushed up, it can end up on beaches. So I know some of you live by the coast, so you might have seen litter on the beaches. I know you've seen ropes and things, but you might also see some litter that's been washed down by rivers and by streams. And some of this litter on the beaches might also have just got there straight away, so it might have been blown or washed straight onto the beach. And then the tide comes in and takes this litter out, or the river keeps flowing, and the plastic bag carries on. And here it is. Here's our plastic bag, and it's ended up in the ocean. So it might have started somewhere in the middle of Scotland where you can't even see the ocean because it's so far away, but it's made that journey all the way down and it's ended up in the ocean. So we do have, because of this process, we've got lots of litter in our oceans. But how much of that litter in our oceans do you think comes from the land? So don't write an answer in the chat, because I'm going to get you to do a wee hands up thing in just a second. So that's how much of the litter that we find in our oceans, how much of that actually goes through this journey from the land rather than just being dropped directly into the ocean. So if you think 60%, so that's 6 out of 10 pieces of litter end up in the ocean that come from land, put one hand up. If you think it's 70%, so 7 out of 10 pieces of litter, put 2 hands up. And if you think it's 80%, so 8 out of 10 pieces of litter that are in the ocean come from land, then you put your hand on your head. Okay? So 1 hand up for 60, 2 hands up for 70, or hand on your head for 80. This is the bit when I wish I could see you all, because I'm imagining you all putting your hands up and trying to figure it out. So have a think. So the answer is 80%. So that's 8 out of every 10 pieces of litter that's in the ocean has actually come from the land. So much of our litter in our oceans is going on this journey and being washed down. So that's a lot. But that's actually quite a good thing in a way, because it means that if we can stop the litter from getting off the land, if we can pick it up before it goes on that journey, then we have the power to help our oceans, which is an amazing thing to be able to do. So we're going to come back to our plastic bag floating around. So this plastic bag is floating around the ocean, not alive, so it's just floating with the currents. And now we're going to think about a couple of different things that can happen to that plastic bag. So the first thing that can happen to this plastic bag is it could be confused for something else. So I want you to have a think, what could that plastic bag look like? What could it be confused with? What could it look a little bit like? Now, if you came to our plastic slide lesson in the kind of autumn of last year, you might have heard a story about this. Oh, there's a few people. Oh, you guys are quick. Very good. So yeah, it looks a bit like a jellyfish, doesn't it? It really does look like a jellyfish, especially if you're a certain type of animal that thinks a jellyfish is really yummy. Does anybody know what kind of animals? Would you? I don't think I would like to eat a jellyfish. I think they look a bit. I quite like jelly, but I think a jellyfish might be a bit squidgy. But does anybody know an animal that really likes to eat jellyfish? Oh, we've got a few answers. Turtles, turtles and sharks and whales. So yeah, there's actually lots of different animals that like to eat jellyfish. They're a really yummy snack for quite a lot of things. But one of the animals that we really worry about is turtles, because they eat a lot of jellyfish. And here's a turtle who's unfortunately about to eat one of these plastic bags. Don't worry, we make sure that this one didn't eat it. But animals like turtles and other animals think that this plastic bag looks like a tasty jellyfish, and then they go, nom, 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 and try and eat it. But that's not going to be very good for the turtle, because it might get stuck in its mouth and it might not be able to breathe very well. And turtles actually have amazing mouths. They've got spikes in their mouths that stop their food coming back out again. So if the jellyfish tries to get away, they can keep the jellyfish in their mouth, which is great if you're trying to eat a jellyfish. But if you're trying to eat a plastic bag and you want to get rid of it, you can't, because it's stuck. And so they can struggle to swallow or breathe, and that can cause them real problems. Or they might actually manage to swallow the plastic bag, but because it's plastic, they can't break it down in their tummies. And so it ends up just sitting there. And then if you imagine that you've just eaten a big thing that's just sitting in your tummy, you feel quite full. You might say, oh, I'm not hungry because I've got a big thing in my tummy. And that's what happens to the turtles, and they go, I'm not really hungry, and then they stop eating and they don't eat enough. And then that can cause them big problems as well. So we have lots of problems with animals eating these plastic bags and eating lots of the other litter that ends up in our oceans. So that's definitely one of the problems with litter. So we're going to go back. So that's one thing that might happen to our plastic bag, which is not very nice. So we're going to go back to our plastic bag though. Oh, very good. Yeah, thank you, Miss Hayden. So someone said there, it's like a human swallowing chewing gum. So if you swallow something and it can get stuck, it's not very nice at all. So we're going to go back to plastic bags. We're going to imagine that this plastic bag maybe wasn't eaten by a turtle. So this plastic bag is going to float around in the ocean. Unfortunately, no animals are going to see it or eat it. And it's just going to float down to the bottom. But what else could happen to it then? What happens to it if nothing actually decides to eat it? Well, eventually it's going to start breaking down. But how long do we think it takes for a plastic bag to break down? Again, don't put your answers in the chat because we're going to play a little game. So it's going to, how long does it take it to actually break down and disappear? So say, don't put your answer in the chat because we're going to play a little game. So we're going to start with 5 years. So if you think, do we think that it's longer or shorter than 5 years? So if you think it's longer or higher than 5 years for it to break down, hold your hand up above your desk. If you think it's lower than 5 years, put your hand below your desk. So higher or lower. Higher than 5 years or lower than 5 years? Okay, drum roll. I can tell you that it is higher than 5 years. What about 10 years? So do you think, if you think it's higher than 10 years, put your hand above your desk. If you think it's lower than 10 years, so somewhere between 5 and 10, put your hand below your desk. Higher than 10, lower than 10. Okay, I can tell you it is higher. Got one more, 25 years. So if you think it's higher than 25 years, put your hand above your desk. If you think it's lower than 25 years, put your hand below your desk. Higher than 25? Lower than 25? What do you think? Okay, so I can tell you it's actually about 20 years. Now, this will vary a bit because it depends on where in the ocean it ends up, what kind of temperatures and what's happening. But on average, it's about 20 years for that plastic bag to break down. So that's a lot of time for it floating around and possibly being eaten by something. So it takes a very long time. And if you think all the plastic bags that are getting washed in, we're starting to fill up our ocean with quite a lot of different plastics and different types of waste. So, but if we think, okay, so it's going to break down, well, hopefully eventually it'll break down and that'll be the end of the story. I'm afraid it's not. There's one more little bit of the story to tell. So what happens when a plastic bag breaks down? What does it turn into? Does it just completely disappear? I'm afraid it doesn't. Because of the way plastics are made, they don't break down very easily. And when they do break down, they don't completely disappear. So they turn into little bits of tiny plastic. And we call these tiny plastics microplastics or nanoplastics. And that's just words to say that they're really, really, really small. So small that you might not even be able to see them, but they're still there. So it never really disappears, that plastic bag. It just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then that can be easily eaten by animals of all sizes and humans. We can even eat tiny bits of these if they're around. Oh, fantastic, Mrs. McGregor. Thank you. You've got some tiny pieces of plastic in your class. That's fantastic. So we've got some of these microplastics. So does anybody think, what effect do you think these tiny plastics have on wildlife and us? If we're getting exposed to these tiny plastics, what do you think is happening to wildlife and us? Anybody got any ideas? What might happen? Don't worry if you're not sure. What do you think could happen? Toxic? Oh, okay, that's a good word from Miss Beatty there. Think it's food? Yeah, absolutely. So animals might eat it. So they could choke. Yeah, if you're a small animal, like a little bird, you could definitely choke on it. Yeah, so we're eating them. So yeah, definitely. So we can end up eating them. And it might make you ill. You know what the answer really is, though? We don't actually know. So you're absolutely right. We can eat them, and the animals, little small animals, might choke on them, but they are in us, and we don't actually know really what these are doing. And that's not really a great thing, to not know what's happening or whether something might be harmful. So the best thing that we can do is actually just stop dropping litter and try and get rid of as much of the pollution and the plastic and the litter that's around so that it can't harm animals and us. So now I'm going to give you a few little pictures to think about. So we've thought about our plastic bag and its little journey. So how else could litter confuse wildlife? So I'm just going to show you here some pictures of some different types of litter that you might see dropped, some of them you mentioned earlier. Can anybody give me any ideas of what might happen? How might animals confuse these? So apart from trying to eat them, because we know that lots of animals might try and eat litter, absolutely, as you've all said very well. But what else might they confuse these with, and how else might these things that we see harm them? So they might try and eat them, but what else might happen to animals if they come across these pieces of litter lying around? What do you think? Might get stuck in them, try and make homes in them. Very good. Go inside the packet. So yeah, absolutely. They might look like food. They might get tangled and stuck. Might use it as a home. So yeah, especially bottles. A lot of animals might think that might not look like a great home to you, but a lot of animals think that looks like a lovely, cozy place to live. But then once they get in, they can get stuck and it's really difficult to get out. Oh, brilliant, might add them to their nest or play with them. Yeah, they might go climbing inside to see if they could find something and get stuck or caught. And yeah, these bands, particularly anything that's a circle. So if you see things that are circles, so elastic bands, these little K-band things, hair bands, also the rings that you get that hold cans together, all of those are really nasty for animals because they can get stuck. And we said, they take a long time to break down these types of plastics and things. So they're not going to disappear and they can get very much hurt the animals. And yeah, they might feed them to their babies. That's a really good thought as well. So anytime, if you're putting things in the bin as well that are a circle, because sometimes we need to throw these things away, then make sure you cut it open first or ask an adult to help you with scissors to cut it open so that when it goes into the waste, it's not going to hurt an animal. Yeah, absolutely. So another one saying they might think it's another animal. Yeah, so they might get confused by it. So there's lots of these things that animals might get confused by and they might get hurt by. So again, it's really good to pick up lots of litter. And we know that the SSPCA get about 2 calls a day to animals affected by litter. So it's definitely a problem that we're seeing quite a lot. And we don't know really, we can't have a really accurate estimate of how many animals that are being affected around the world by litter. But we know that it's probably in the millions because we've got a big world and we're dropping a lot of litter, I'm afraid. But the good news is that you can definitely do something to help all these amazing animals and help protect them and look after them. So that comes on to what we would like you to do today. So there's a couple of things that we'd like to do today. So one thing is to keep looking after your adopted space. So I know yesterday Kat was talking to you about adopting a place to keep clean and look after. So keep looking after that place, keep looking at picking up litter from around your school or your nursery, because every single piece of litter that you pick up from that place is a piece of litter that can't hurt an animal anymore. So every time you pick up a piece of litter, and make sure you're using all the right things, as Kat says, make sure you're wearing gloves and using the right equipment. But every time you pick up a piece of litter, that's one less piece of litter that can hurt wildlife. So make sure you keep picking up your litter and looking after your amazing adopted space. The other thing we'd like you to do today is to think a little bit more and learn a bit more about your adopted space. So we want you to imagine a litter journey. So I'm going to show you a picture of a map. So this is a map of Stirling, and this is the Keep Scotland Beautiful office in Stirling. So I'm just going to use this as an example to show you what you can do. So you need some kind of map. So you could use an online map like this one that I've got here, or you could get an ordnance survey map, or you could try and draw a map yourself of what you know around your local area. Once you've got your map, you need to then work out, if you imagine a piece of litter being dropped from your adopted space, so you need a map with your adopted space in it, imagine a piece of litter being dropped and imagine how it would get to the ocean. So I've found the Keep Scotland Beautiful offices, and I'm going to imagine someone dropped a piece of litter just outside. And I'm going to think, what could happen? Well, it's going to get blown around by the wind or washed by the rain. So I think it might get blown across the building site, that's the kind of grey area you can see there, and then I think it might be washed down street in the rain and wiggle through the trees at the end, and then it's going to get to the River Forth up there. So that's me starting my imaginary journey. And you can just get it as far as the nearest piece of water, or if you want to go a bit further, this is a map of the Firth of Forth. So Stirling is up in the left-hand side corner, and I'm going to imagine how my piece of litter, once it's got to the River Forth, would get out to the ocean. So I'm going to draw a really wiggly line, because the River Forth at the top is really, really wiggly. So I'm going to draw a line and imagine how it would get to the ocean. So we've given you a template. So there's a template that you can use to draw your map, or you can trace it on an Ordnance Survey map, or use an online map and draw a picture from that, whatever you want to do. Once you've done that, if you want an extra challenge, try and think about all the different animals that the litter could encounter on its journey. And you could draw a picture of those animals, or you could just write a list of the different animals you might see, or you could even imagine and write a story about one of these animals and what happens when it meets this piece of litter that you're imagining going on its journey. And if you want an extra special challenge, what you can do is try and measure the distance of the journey that you've drawn. So it might be quite tricky to draw the full journey, because you can see all these wiggles, but if you really want a challenge, you could try and do that. Or you could just try and measure the distance that it took to get from your adopted place to the water. So just this wiggly line here. See if you can work out how far that is. How long would it take your piece of litter to get to some water? So we'd like you to imagine that litter journey, and that will just help you to think about what you're doing when you're picking up your litter and you're not dropping litter, how many wonderful animals that you're looking after and protecting by doing that, by looking after your waste properly and looking after your amazing adopted space. So thank you very much for joining me. I've just got a couple of wee bits before you go. So I would really like to know a little bit, like yesterday, about how much you enjoyed today's lesson. So if you enjoyed today's lesson, you think yes, lots, then you can put a thumbs up. A bit, put a thumbs across, and not really, then pop a thumbs down. And if you could do that in your class, and then your teacher could please share what the kind of average is, what everybody thinks in the class as to whether you thought you liked it lots, a little bit, or not so much. That would be fantastic. Again, lots, little bit, not so much. If you could share that with us, that would be fantastic. Oh, thank you very much. We've got some answers coming in from teachers. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really, really helpful for us to know that you enjoyed it. Thank you very much, everybody. And I've got one more question for you just before you go. Can you tell us one thing you learned about today? Thank you very much, Mrs. Bain. Oh, and I've just seen a lovely question as well. We need to think outside the box about our litter journey, because we are surrounded by ocean. Wow, that's a fantastic one to think about, though, isn't it? If you're surrounded by ocean, maybe you could think about where in the ocean that litter could go. So if it's really close to the ocean, maybe you could think about where that litter could move. You could even, if you wanted to, go and learn about some of the currents and how the water moves in the ocean near you to see where in the world your litter might end up. That's fantastic. So what things we learned about today? The journey of a plastic bag. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, and thank you, Mrs. McGregor, for sharing that we should pick up litter because it would save the world and our wildlife. You're absolutely right. That is fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all these things that you've learned. We've had a wonderful, wonderful time sharing our story with you. Please do say hello and share your work, like Kat said at the start. It's wonderful to see, because I can't see your amazing faces. So it'd be wonderful if you can share things that you're doing with us, and we can share them in our assembly on Friday to see what everybody's been doing. And you can also find us on social media and share that at KSB Scotland, apologies, at KSB Scotland if you're sharing on social media. As Kat says, don't forget to join our new Litter League. And please, or you can also email things into us at ecoschools@keepscotlandbeautiful.org. So thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward, hopefully we'll look forward to seeing you all tomorrow for our next stage of our lesson. It's going to be a really exciting one tomorrow as well. So thank you so much. Kat's just shared the Litter League link there if anybody would like to join that as well. And we'll look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Have a wonderful day, and hopefully enjoy protecting your amazing adopted place. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day.
Well, good morning again, everybody. We will get started in just a minute or two, just waiting for the last few people to join the call, and we will start our live lesson. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for joining today's live lesson. I can't believe we are halfway through our Spring Clean live lessons. So, welcome to today. My name's Joe. I'm going to be hosting the start of the lesson today. I am not Kat or Nicola, but we are, in fact, joined by them today as well. So, hi, Kat. Hi, Nicola.
Hi, Joe.
Hi. So can you please tell us, Kat, where you are today and what you're up to?
Well, today we're here at Environment Community High School with 6 other primary schools. We're here for the Ladywell Litter COP, all about litter, a whole day of action of talking to kids about litter and looking at the woods and seeing what we can do about a litter problem in a place that these pupils really love. So there's a whole